Hey everyone, Tactics here, bringing you my final title route walkthrough of the War Within Season 1, where we've saved probably the hardest dungeon of the Season 4 last here with Grim Batol. In this video, I'll be taking you through my advanced route for this key and discussing some tips, tricks, routing variations you can do, as well as just tech that we used that will hopefully help you and your group push for that 0.1% dungeon title. I'll also leave the MDT string down in the description if you want to grab it for yourself. Plus, of course, the playlist link to the other videos in the series as well. So make sure you do check those out. Otherwise, let's get into the first big pull here off the top, where we are going to be skipping these first three mobs. It's a pretty long grouping here, and these three mobs kind of make it a little bit more annoying. You can add them into this pull and do a slightly different first pull here with these guys, the Destroyer and the Patrol. But you're going to see we're going to take this Destroyer down, and we're actually going to pull the Patrol and the first pack near the dragons that you use for the bombing run. So we're pulling a bunch more stuff here, which allows us to kind of do this first area in two pulls instead of like 2.5 or 3. So that's why we skip that. With a shroud, pre-invis also works, by the way. So if you do like a pre-invis, that's totally fine as well, or even just invis after the fact. And we're going all the way down here, and we are going to have the distract on this overseer, because the double overseer, well, doable, is very scary, and this initial part of the pull is already very scary. So I'm going to throw a judgment out and not an Avenger shield on this brute, just to make sure the pack starts coming and I don't accidentally pull this overseer who is getting distracted, like I mentioned. And we're going to pull back to around here. Now you also see I'm going to be throwing out a spell warding immediately almost onto our enhancement shaman, and that is because on the grouping of this pull, in 2 more seconds, this guy is doing his knockback, and pretty much everyone is going to have some sort of answer for that based on positioning, except for the enhanced shaman. And so because the whole pack is still getting kind of grouped up while this is happening, we just found it better to throw the spell warding out on the enhance on the first one, just so he didn't need to worry about where he was standing and would immune the knockback. So spell warding's out. You can see I'm going to bubble this as well, just to make sure I get initial threat on everything and I immune that knockback. So that is kind of double thing. So basically what we have, like 3 people immuning kind of with myself, with I believe the rogue is cloaking as well with the spell warding, and the dragon can obviously rescue the priest as well if needed, or they can LOS as well, slightly back. It's easier for the range to LOS this initial one anyways. Then we're just kind of tanking here on the pack. The priority is to make sure that the Destroyer does get soothed when the Enrage goes out, and that's just the Rogue's job. He's going to have his rotational Shiv, and he's going to be using that off of the Destroyer. We do get the second knockback, but this one's much easier to handle, and you can, like I said, LOS it if needed. And then we're just going straight to the next pack here, which is all of the remaining trash, including these 2 mobs here. Be careful, this Patrol, don't grab it. But there's going to be several kicks here, and basically how we manage the kicks is I'm going to be soloing kind of X and triangle almost, with the evoker helping me out. So I'm kind of bouncing between these two. And then the rogue plus the enhancement shaman is going to be taking care of star. So that tends to mean that only one bolt is going off at a time, right? So there are going to be bolts going off between X and triangle, but as long as they aren't double bolting the same target, you're kind of safe. And that's the general rule here when you have these pulls with 3+ casters, which happens quite a bit in Grim Batol. It's kind of one of the reasons why it's very, very hard to do, because there's so many bolters. You're going to let some through, but as long as you're not letting double bolts through, you're kind of fine. The other thing too, you can do like AoE CC chains as well if you start to run out of kicks. We found that to be kind of a little bit annoying almost for tank defensiveness, because these brutes, right, if you kind of chain interrupt them, it's much better basically to have their hits be lined up, because then you can just put one defensive and get them all, right? That's kind of like the whole thing. And if you start, CCing and desyncing them from defensives used, it's very problematic. And this is another one of those dungeons which is very problematic to do that, specifically later on when we get to flame renders. If you are CCing flame renders when your tank has pressed a defensive for their hit, and then it's chain CC'd for long enough that the defensive wears off, your tank is in trouble, right? So you need to be very careful, especially on higher keys, to make sure that you are not desyncing tank busters from your tank's defensives. Now we get into the bombing run. And so basically the goal here is to create one real pull before the first boss. So we want to destroy or get very, very low the rest of every other trash pack. What we ignore are these 3 casters and the guys on the bridge. Those are the guys that we don't ever really throw big bullets into. And so if this is a good lineup here, we have a good lineup, you would throw your big bombs into this. Obviously, not all of them. It's good to have some players who choose to throw early, and some players who only spend like 2, maybe 3 on the first run, and then they drop on at the back and see who is remaining and who needs the big hits at the end. But we have like I think our priest. Yeah, our priest is gone basically, and he sends everything on the first run, and then we're gonna go from here. If this patrol, for example, was like over here instead, you would wait, because on the way back it would be lined up with this pack. So that's something to consider where this patrol is, because it's huge value basically to hit this when it's lined up with the destroyer, and you want to send at least like 4 bombs into that. So something to keep in mind. Another thing, do not underestimate the power of spamming your 2 button. You have unlimited of those, so make sure you are pressing that if you're not pressing your 1 button. And like I said, right, no one's doing big bombs on the guys in the middle, those 2 packs there. We're instead focusing on these other guys. And you can see here, I still have 2 of my bombs left. I'm just going to be spamming my 2 button here. Yeah, and throwing that because that's pretty healthy. Pretty healthy. We see that's dead, and that starts dying too. So I have an extra 1 bomb here, which I can send over there. But basically, you know, if you didn't have any spares, or if this stuff was still live, I would have sent that 1 here. Because I had a spare, it can go to the triple caster. And if you had to pick between triple caster and the bridge, I actually recommend hitting the triple caster pack, because once they're dead, the next pull gets significantly easier. And then we're moving up to that next pull, where it's going to be the triple casters, the guys on the bridge, which is 1 more caster, and the dragon right here. So what's going to happen is I'm going to group up this pack. I'm going to use Divine Toll to get everything in, and I'm going to tank the dragon right here. And basically how this works, as you can see the Twilight Flame go out, basically all you want to do is make sure you're not cluttering the safe area. And the safe area are the pillars on the bridge. So I'm bubbling here, but you can see the kind of on the corner of the screen, the priest moved up. You can LOS on the corner or the pillars of this bridge by standing here. You have 2 safe pillars, 1 for range, 1 for melee. And as long as you just make sure you are putting the puddles like in this area, or in this area, and not directly on the pillars, you can easily LOS this dragon and mitigate all that damage. And you can see how quickly all the earth colors die, right? You just kind of get them in and use some AoE CCs initially, and you should have full CDs for that pull. There I am LOSing, boom. And they should die relatively quickly because they're, you know, especially if you get a few of the 2 shots into them once everything else is dead, or even like a 1 shot like I did. They were at like 80% health, but still, just with CDs, they have so much less health than all the other mobs. It's not really a problem. That pack was fully dead. This pack has like 2 barely any health mobs, so we just go straight into the boss here. This boss is pretty straightforward. You want to make sure, especially as you get into the higher key levels, you have something for every single commanding roar. That was Zephyr. Our dragon did almost die kind of to that. So again, some sort of personal or group defensive or something running for that every single time. Again, you can check Not Even Close. It's a great website for seeing when things one-shot. You kind of input your own stats and buffs and etc. And so like at a 14, it's not too bad. I think people could probably live natty. But as soon as you get to 15, that might get very scary. 16, even scarier. Most likely you need something every single time. So be aware of that. Otherwise, it's a pretty straightforward boss, right? The biggest thing is pretty straightforward with these rock spikes. Put them kind of like this way down, right? Because this is the way the dragons travel, right? They travel, I guess, what is this, north-south? No, this is east-west. East-west across the platform, and you want to do a similar thing, because if you put them all in one column, you're all of a sudden clogging up, and it's very, very hard to actually use that column if it's the safe column near the end of this fight as stuff starts filling up. I think it does despawn eventually, but it's still just better, you know, use this side of the room here. You can see they all kind of move up, drop over there, and we have every single column is still like very safe, right? So that's the idea. This is a very scary bleed, especially because if you don't remove it, it does overlap with this commanding roar, so tanks be aware of that. If you have things like dwarf, if you have an evoker in your group to bleed cleanse, use those things. Obviously paladins can also bubble it to remove it as well. So make sure you have some sort of defensive that lasts from the bleed application, at least a 3-stack at the very least, to this commanding shout if you are maintaining that bleed, because it can be quite scary for tanks, that kind of wombo combo. Otherwise, this is not much to talk about for this boss. There's no weird strategy. Go to the safe area, put the rock spikes on the edges like this, like I'm talking about, make a line across the room here. That's really it. I'm not going to talk about this boss very much. I guess Bloodlust, by the way, is still on cooldown. It was a first pull. That's where we Bloodlusted, and the goal next is going to be lusting the next boss on pull. So there we go. Going to the first pull here. We do pause for a second. Basically, once this guy does a stun, you can like do like a 2-second count. And then the Molten Giant will be stunned during the pull. That is ideal. Obviously, if you come to the pull, the Molten Giant is like half stunned or more than half stunned on the duration. Don't worry about it. But because you know, if you come and the guy's not stunned yet, it's definitely worth waiting the 5 seconds. Boom! Like see now he's stunned with a damage amp for 14 seconds in the pull. Actually insane. This is very, very good value. So if you have the ability to just wait 5 seconds, it is worth it. It is worth it to get this lineup, and that's how it works basically. Once you see one of the beguilers get knocked and stunned, the giant is the next one to be stunned. I mean, same deal here, I think. Yeah. So we wait, the beguiler gets knocked and stunned, and then we're going to go in after that, after a couple second wait, and he's going to get stunned. So this was a very good timing for us, and this is all kind of set up by waiting initially and getting that damage amp on the giant. It makes us way safer. Otherwise, for these pulls, the biggest thing is once this Molten Wake goes off, all of these kicks are banned. These Shadow Flame bolts will absolutely own people because you have this fire damage amp. So you really need to make sure that these casts don't go off, whether that's from kicks, stops, whatever. And of course, you don't want the actual channeled cast to go off. Even a tick can be very annoying. Sometimes there's no way around it, especially if you're just running out of kicks. But ideally, you want to stop those. And so we make sure these mobs get silenced or interrupted while this debuff is out, and at the very least let people get topped. Really, this late one here, as soon as we get to this point, it's kind of fine because the healer's been able to top us, but immediately after the AoE happens, right, you can see how low we are, and so if any of these bolts had gone through, people would have died. Now from here, there's a couple of things. So we want to pull the boss with Lust and CDs, because what we want to do is pull the boss with this guy. He's also kind of in a bad spot. So instead of doing this, we opt to just do the last Molten Giant, I think. So yeah, we kind of go towards it. We're like, this doesn't really work with our timings. We're going a bit too fast. Boom, we're just going to do the last Giant. And I think we go a little early here, but I think it actually ends up working out. So luckily, you know, apparently if you go even just before the mob gets stunned, you're okay. But that's a bit tighter of a timing. I think we got a little lucky here on this one, but ended up working out. Kill this guy. We're gonna have 2 minutes. We're gonna have Bloodlust in 30 seconds, and the boss is kind of patrolling into a good spot, so we're happy. Now we are going to do a tech which I believe has been fixed. Which I believe there was a tech where I mean, we do it here, where you can LOS the flurry cast and the boss doesn't do it. Which I mean, I'm not surprised it was fixed. I actually was surprised it was still in when we did this key. Because I had expected to be fixed within a couple weeks of people doing it, and apparently it took like a month and a half. But it's gone now, I believe. So you do have to actually use a defensive on that, so be aware of that. But otherwise, we're gonna go right in here. We're gonna pull the boss. We're gonna pull this Flame Render Earthcaller onto the boss with our 2-minute CDs. And the kind of goal of this is that we're gonna, you know, use the space. And I think actually things go weird here. Let me see if things go weird. I believe if I remember right, we bait this first frontal bad. Now I remember what happened. Our enhanced pops off a little bit before I actually get threat on these guys. And what happens here is now I'm an eligible target. So tanks, be aware, when there's only 4 people alive, if someone of the DPS dies, it seems like the tank is an eligible target for the frontal, when usually the tank is not, right? He can't actually target you. But so because of this, I'm not used to this, I think. And I think I bait a bad frontal. Yeah, it might have been on the priest still. But potentially, maybe that wasn't the priest. But still, just be careful, tanks, if someone is dead. And so things are a bit delayed here. I'm trying to get the him up. We haven't lusted yet. Things are a bit weird. I have to commit a few more defensives than I wanted to. I don't even know if I'm able to LOS on this one. Yeah, I might actually have to take this one. Yeah, I think I do just take this one because we're now in a weird spot where I was going to use that pillar up there to LOS, and we can't because we baited the frontal there. So again, when you're pulling this, you want to bait that first frontal here, and then you want to kite the boss up this way and then work your way back. That's what you'd want to do. We obviously mess up the initial part of this boss, so things get a little chaotic. But we've recovered at this point, but we are going to get these first sparks. But like I said, everyone's going to get the sparks now, so just have some major defensive for this. You're going to likely be committing bubble, and you saw I committed spell ward too to this first pack. Spell ward again to catch those tank busters. If CC's has gone out when that spell ward was on me, then my spell would expire, and all of a sudden I'd get a double tank buster and I would probably die. So make sure you are not hard CCing those mobs during your tank CDs. Then I think I did bubble after that, so just to deal with that. And the goal here is basically to delay until your next set of 2 minutes, and then do it again with the next 3-pack. That's kind of the goal. And then by then I'd probably have bubble back. I wouldn't have my spell ward again. That only gets to be used one time, but you would have your bubble back. So now, because we're a little bit trapped, we're gonna have to do some weird stuff with space. And so we're going to be right here. I'm going to pull the boss slightly to get the next cleave baited behind the boss to conserve some more space, which is nice. And then I'm probably going to be using this one to LOS. But like I said, from here, you would probably, instead of LOSing, I'd probably do like an Eye of Tyr scarab thing. You could call for an external or whatever, because you can no longer LOS this boss. But this is what the tech basically looked like if you wanted to know what it looked like. Again, it doesn't work anymore. Basically, goes out and I just go up, LOS, nothing happens. Doesn't work anymore. I repeat. At this point, again, we're watching cooldowns. We have like 25 seconds. So basically, we're like, okay, we're going to do one more kite, and then we're going to go into these mobs. So, you know, I'm going to be kiting up the edge here. Again, I probably should have tried to get the boss around the corner here instead of dropping puddles like on the side of the stairs. On the pillar would have made it a bit nicer, just for space, because again, we're just, everything's chaotic. Everything's chaotic. You also need to be careful on these movements because, of course, it can mess with the Disc Priest's healing. So be very, very careful. We're baiting this last frontal, and we're doing a big movement here. And I think we drop a barrier here to help deal with this healing because we have to get around this fire. Yeah, they all get in the barrier. I get these mobs. I do a bubble taunt here for this first set, just to help with that debuff. And then we get our 2 minutes out. And the bubble taunt almost kind of overlaps with this Molten Fury, but not quite. So I probably could have timed it a little bit better, maybe, but the first one was going off and I was a little bit scared. And now you get to these other ones where you see, like that was one debuff into me, and I lost a bunch of my health with Eye of Tyr up, I believe. I would almost lose threat on one of them too, but we end up cleaning this up, keeping kicks on the Earth Color, of course, because I'm not actually there, and finishing off these guys. There you go. Not as clean as it could have been, but you know that's what you do if it goes wrong. From here, we're doing another decently sized pull. It's going to be this pack on the right here with 2 Warlocks and a Beguiler. So you can see the marks are already going out. Basically, what's happening is I'm going to be on the Beguiler, and then we have, I think, the Rogue on one and the Shaman on the other. Warlock just getting their kicks. Obviously, Shaman has a Curse Dispel in this dungeon, so he's going to be dispelling as much as he can. The Dragon can also do it with Caught Flame. And then we're pulling into these 2 guys on the side in the Lava Bender. Just waiting for a decent control on the Lava Bender, getting everything in. Dragon kicking the Beguiler in just so everything is actually like together. And you are just worried about this one Flame Render. And I think did it actually happen here where, yeah. So we, again, delayed the guy. And this is kind of what I'm talking about, where I almost die here because we delayed the first tank buster and I had my pain sup for that first tank buster and it got delayed until after the pain sup expired. So this is what I'm talking about. Very, very careful with this. I ended up using my Goak cheat there to it procs immediately, basically. But that's the kind of thing I'm talking about, right? It's very scary. With one, it's not the end of the world. But especially when you have this Enforcer wailing on you, I think I'm gonna probably throw out oh no, I bubble here, so I'm not too worried about it. And then we have either Hodge or Kidney, most likely, that's gonna go out on this guy at this point, potentially. Oh yeah, there's the both, actually, the Hodge and the Kidney. And that's how we'll handle it a lot of the time, because like I said, Shiv's more of a damage cooldown, and the Invoker's not spec'd into his Enrage Dispel, right? So usually what we'll do is a single target stun, or I'll just slightly back up. Next pull, again, is a couple Warlocks. 3 Warlocks, actually, and a Beguiler. So now we have 3 kicks, Evoker, Shaman, and Rogue. I'm going to be kicking this Beguiler. I will put spare kicks into whichever one is needed, just kind of as needed here. And again, Enforcer, he's starting to go off. He gets a Kidney. As he goes off, it resets his entire thing. That's the common pattern of what we're going to do here. Next pack, we're going to tag the Lava Bender. Again, be careful of the Flame Render. Don't get caught watching this Lava Bender. Make sure you are defensiving and you are watching this Enforcer, we are also going to end up tagging these guys in once we're a bit established, I think. Just to make sure. I mean, this is basically like you're going to have this lava bender for a while. So it's just good to have some mobs on it. You don't want to get murdered by all the curses going out, and so we kind of wait a little bit so that we can get some of these mobs much lower. Particularly the flame renders in this area are very scary, and then, you know, we make sure we have damage. It's backloaded. As you can see, the cooldowns were just spent post the the lava bender, sorry, hitting 50%. It's very, very important that you do backload your CDs, offensive or defensive, on that mob to make sure it dies in a timely manner, because that pulsing damage gets very, very scary. And honestly, I probably could have pulled the warlocks in a little bit faster here. As you can see, we're hitting these two mobs kind of on their own for a while, so probably should have pulled them in earlier. Then we're going 3 mobs here, and I believe, yeah, we are going to get these mobs when they come in. Just kind of a weird pat, so we get those. And again, you know, using defensives as needed, rotating through defensive, bubble taunt there for flame render hit. And earlier, like, as with a single flame render, it's really not too bad. And then the important thing is I save spell warding for as many double flame render pulls as I can. So you can see, like, I do have spell warding available, and we have a double flame render pull kind of coming up. I think this is where we mess up the skip, though. So what we want to do here, I believe, is shroud past this stuff. Not this stuff. This stuff you can walk by, but we wanted to shroud past this and do the lava benders and then pull these guys in when the lava bender kind of hits 50% for some additional, like, funnel damage. But I think the rogue de-stealths by accident. Yeah. So he dies here. So it's like, oh, okay, I guess we're doing this. So it's a little bit weird, but we're gonna get him up. And then this is the double flame render like I talked about, so you want to be very, very careful. I don't quite have my bubble back, but like I said, I do have my spell warding. And I think we're just trying to get him because he's in the yeah, he's in the goo over there, and I was very, very holy power starved at the start of this pull. And so once we're established again, we're just gonna rip everyone here. We got 2 minutes, so we're gonna send it. And again, you know, doing as much damage as you can specifically to one flame bender, because this is going to be a very, very scary pull if you push both flame benders below 50% at the same time. So you can see 50% where the other was at 75, and this flame bender is getting absolutely owned here. And it's dying basically as the other one is pushing, again, because of how our damage was a little bit backloaded in that pull. And this, honestly, for a lot of keys, if you're coming here, you'd likely be coming here a little bit slower. That's a pretty good lust pull right there, that one we just did. And what you can opt to do too is you could have skipped that entirely, done the boss, how we're going to do the boss, and then gone back with lust and CDs and done that pull after the boss if you didn't have lust available. So that's an option as well. We obviously, you know, accidentally butt pulled it. You can see a lot of accidents happening in this pull, so we just did it. We had 2 minutes though, so that's all that really matters. Then we have this boss where, again, like, we're not really curse dispelling on this boss. It's kind of totally fine. There's not really a ton else to heal. The other thing is, I guess for these shadow flames, by the way, so they can't target to the tank initially. However, they can if you use like a disorient or a fear. Certain abilities, for some reason, reset this fixate. So when the fixate gets reset, if it does get reset, it can pick the tank, but the initial one I don't believe can. Stuns are safe. Stuns and knockbacks are safe, but some things just reset it, so be careful. Then the dragon comes out. We are going to be using the cubby on this, so you're going to see I'm going to get some threat on the boss. Boom, I'm running straight into the cubby, and I'm AFK in this cubby. Now, there is also a strategy similar to this where you can step out of the cubby and you can, like, use the lantern over here, the brazier, to not get knocked back, and you can dodge the frontals. But honestly, as a paladin, these frontals aren't really that scary. And, you know, if you stand far enough back and your melee stand at max melee, basically the tornadoes aren't going to hit you. So you're going to see, like, when tornadoes start coming out after the knockback, and it's actually, I think it already happened. Boom. Oh, there it is. Yeah. Note about the knockback. Pain. Right? Again, kind of like the first boss shout. At some key level, this is going to one-shot you. You need a defensive for every single knockback. Be aware of that. You know, that obviously starts earlier than the first boss. As a tank here, right, you're just defensiving every frontal to have something available. I am 100% spell block, so that's why I am Word of Glorying before every single time. And you can see when the tornadoes start spinning. There we go. Because my melee are at max melee range and I am in the back of this cubby, these tornadoes are not going to hit me. They're just going to spin right in front of me. And so I'm safe in the back corner here. and you're really only taking the boss melee damage, the knockback damage from that, which you get knocked back into the wall, and then the frontal damage. So as long as you have something every time, it's kind of safe, and it makes the fight basically trivial, because what it does is it spawns both the ads directly under the boss, and so you can use things like AoE stuns or knockbacks and basically just full cleave them down. Another one of those situations where you get better cleave, kind of like the Avinox fight when I was talking about that in that video, where you can just get the cleave by positioning better. This kind of does the same thing. It makes the boss much faster. And we're moving on. Again, we did lust that with our 2 minutes. We got this next pack here. Same deal. I mean, we've talked about a lot of these packs. There's 2 Beguilers and 2 Warlocks here, so you distribute your kicks accordingly. And I'm probably going to be helping out with extra kicks on, I think it's probably Triangle, 1 Flame Render, 1 Enforcer. Oh, we do also have our Priest go and tag these hatchlings as well to basically kind of drop a pull almost off of this. Just be careful. I probably should have bubbled the previous one when he was gone. That gets a little scary. We probably should have also reset the Enforcer. You see I do like a little bit of a kite here. We stunned a little bit late probably. I didn't have my Hodge available. I don't know what I used it on, but I almost died there, and Bubble would have just saved that from happening. So now we did get these hatchlings. Basically cuts down kind of a pull almost. So what you're going to see us do here, again, hug the right. You can walk right through this egg. Don't try and walk around it or you'll pull the dragon. And we're going to get this pack and the pack below. And we're going to pull it back up. And the key here is don't start doing your AoE until all the hatchlings are grouped up. Once all the hatchlings are grouped up like this, boom, now you can start AoEing, because you don't want to kill the first set of hatchlings on this platform and then 5 seconds later kill this set of hatchlings because they've just been in the pack for 5 less seconds, because that's going to stagger your really, really large shadow damage amp on you for a long time. So you want to wait for your AoE to get all these hatchlings in. And then this is essentially what you're doing is 2 of these double Corruptor pulls back to back, and that's kind of fine. And again, this is where things like externals are really, really good, right? I don't need paints up here, so we have paint subs available, we have sack available, we have spell ward available, we have whatever immunities and combat drops, because again, like there, I don't know if he vanished or shadow melded, but both work to drop the target of the beam. So if you have a night elf, if you have anyone with combat drops, you use those here, especially when you have a large amount of the debuff. And then same deal. We're doing the same thing here, except there's just less hatchlings. So that last one is actually a harder pull because I believe it has more hatchlings. Same deal. I gotta throw sack out. Maybe we see who needs it. And we're going straight into the final boss. Now, another, like, it's not super complicated, I would say. And this gets a lot easier if you have a spec that can consistently kind of clear tentacles, like a DK or a warrior in your group. Both of them are quite good at clearing tentacles. Ours is kind of okay, right? We have the rogue, which has cloak, but it's obviously a much longer CD. And so what you're going to see us do, and what I could have done better, I think I spell warding someone kind of at a bad time, but basically when you're using those immunities, you kind of want to try and overlap them with the seeds in the intermission, I guess, phase. So I'll show you that in a second, but basically it just kind of gets double value out of those immunities. So Void Surge obviously deals a ton of damage. That is something your healer needs to be prepped for, and potentially you do need to be using group defensives on. Personals, I wouldn't recommend doing that, because again, I think the Abyssal Corruption is much more important to use personal defensives on, especially now that it only targets 2 players. And so I think definitely want to be putting healing CDs or things like Zephyr Barrier on the big AoE, as opposed to this where you can use your personals. And like I said, at this point, for example, boom, Rogue gets picked, he cloaks to kind of get the double value, and he immediately goes out and clears like 6 tentacles, 7 tentacles. So that's kind of what I'm talking about. Like, if you're going to use immunities, that's a great time to do it. Something else, like for example, if someone got picked, I could, and it wasn't like the rogue who got an immunity, I could spell warding them to basically immune the damage. They're still going to have the AoE around them, right? Because spell warding doesn't remove the dot like Cloak did there, but then they would not be taking the damage, and then they could run out and they could clear a bunch of tentacles. So that's how kind of you can get double value of having that be a defensive while also clearing a ton of tentacles. So little tip there. Again, I bubbled this first knockback, so again, I use it to clear a few, and we're kind of in a weird spot, honestly. Like, I almost slightly regret using bubble on this first set and think, well, maybe I should have used it on the second set, just because the rogue had just done his clear. So I think that would have been better. I should have used like just a big defensive there. And just in general too, tanks, make sure you're watching like where you are. Obviously I bubbled this one, so I don't really care, but like, take a quick look at your surroundings. Make sure you're getting knocked not into a tentacle, right? And again, we Zephyr this next AoE, so that's kind of a good spot to Zephyr. And just rinse and repeat here. In terms of where to find the actual AoE, you see, I glance up immediately, and what you're looking for is the absence of the ring, or the ring being immediately visible. And that kind of tells you where you need to go. So you can see here, I look, there's no ring here, which means that it's likely going to be in that direction. I do a quick look, I see the ring there. You can see I'm going to start moving. It's going to be towards this direction because that's where we saw like there was no ring at all, if that makes sense. And I just know it's going to be leaning towards that direction. Again, you can, I'm going to fast forward again to show you the next one, basically. So boom, Shadow Gale goes out. I look. I don't see anything over, so I see, okay, there's nothing in this lava pit behind us, which means that it's kind of towards that direction. And so I kind of stay still. Yeah, we throw the ping out. You see, it's right. It's kind of basically almost directly on top of us, right? And again, so let's do it again. Why not? Here it is, Shadowy Gale. It goes out. And we see it kind of cover up the lava pit a little bit. We don't see anything, and we see this right here, so we can see directly across from us. It's not there. I think this is where we cloak. Yeah, we just ripped the cloak here because we had a wall of tentacles, but that's the general idea, right? You kind of look along the kind of, there's like 4 edges you can look at, and you see, okay, I see lava. Is there the first purple circle? Is it visible there? Is it not visible there? If it is visible there, it's towards the opposite side. If it's not visible there, it's towards that side, kind of idea. So look at a couple of the edges and kind of get an idea of where you need to generally move. And unfortunately here, right, because we had to use the cloak early for that wall of tentacles, 1, we're stacked up a little bit, which is not ideal. And 2, he doesn't get the clear here, but I think it was a pretty value cloak. He doesn't end up dying because we were initially stacked, so do make sure when you get to the area, you immediately drop a loose spread, because I think, yeah, it was like just a couple ticks even, right? Like 1, 2 ticks of stacking, and that's like, again, 1 key level up, they're both dead, right? So just be very, very careful. Make sure you are doing that loose spread a little bit. And that is it for this boss and this series. So hopefully you guys did learn something from this series. And if you did, be sure to leave a like and subscribe for more content like it, including plenty more dungeon and raid guides coming for Season 2 and beyond through the rest of the World Soul Saga. As always, I need to give a massive thank you to all of my Patreon supporters for helping me to continue to make all of this content for you guys. So thank you, and I'll see everyone in the next video.